The ever contentious Pixel 6 Pro. Fine wine or spoilt milk? With the Pixel 7 due in just a few months, it's about time to report on how my 6 Pro has fared long term. I picked this up to act as my main camera, offering far better video performance than my previous Oneplus. But as a result, this A-roll footage is being captured on the Pixel, so pretend I'm holding it. The Pixel 6 certainly has been contentious. I don't recall a recent device that's had so much hype, but got so much flack once released. Much of it was rightly deserved, with a long list of issues like slower updates, poor battery, fingerprint unlock, and signal, to name a few. I definitely wasn't immune from the issues either, experiencing a handful, but nothing I consider deal-breaking. My fingerprint reader has been absolutely fine, reliably unlocking every time, as long as my hands are dry. I do press and hold though, as it does take a moment, so don't expect to be able to get through with just a quick tap. There does still appear to be an issue with Pixel software though, where it'll occasionally demand a passcode. Rather annoying, when I've been conditioned to only use my meat sticks. The screen on top of that has been pretty great, but I'm also not all that picky. I appreciate the 120Hz refresh rate, as it makes things feel smoother. While it is noticeable over 60Hz, I don't really see a huge difference over devices with 90. Sadly, the Pro model does have an annoying curve to it, which also suffers from touch sensitivity issues along the edge. It's not often an issue though, except when sites put buttons off to the side. It gets plenty bright enough to overcome the outdoor sun, for those rare occasions that I do actually venture outside, and the auto brightness has been pretty spot on. Proximity sensor can be a bit finicky though, sometimes being a bit slow to react and occasionally causing the always on display to turn off and stop responding. I assume the sensor thinks it's in pocket mode. Lastly, for the display, a nice extra for the Pro model is the LTPO tech included, which lets the refresh rate vary as required, going as low as 10 Hz. Nothing you'll notice, but does help to take some strain off the battery. Speaking of the battery, this is another area where I had no issues, where many online were quite vocal. I've been averaging 15-hour days with 4 hours of screen on time, and still gone to bed with 45% in the tank. This was just from general use, ranging from social media doom scrolling, YouTube, Teams, and navigation, with the always on display turned on. It should be noted though that I don't get 5G where I am, nor does my SIM offer it, so most of my use is 4G and Wi-Fi. The battery does drop off sharply for any filming of course, but that's expected. What wasn't was the heat. It hasn't been an issue lately, as Australia is currently in the middle of winter, but filming in the summer would often take a little longer. It's just like a child that doesn't know how to hold their bladder. This thing needs regular breaks. I'd usually expect to get around 20 minutes at 4K 30 before it yelled at me though. While on the shooter, you can already see how the video looks, but it can take some banger photos too. My thoughts on that haven't changed from the initial review. It does sometimes take some average shots, especially when using the lower quality ultra-wide and telephoto lenses. But in general, it's capable of taking a great shot in a wide range of conditions most of the time. And with Google's move to the new camera sensor here with the 6 series, and reportedly keeping it with the 7, I expect the software side of things to keep improving with time. Still on the internals, the new Tensor chip has been solid, and I have no concerns that, on paper, it lags behind in benchmarking compared to other devices. As for general day-to-day use, it's a non-issue. The thing that is an issue is perhaps Google's radio choice, which manifests as one of the other major reported problems: connectivity. Firstly, Bluetooth. My car and Chromebook connections have consistently been slow and unreliable. Connection to speakers and headphones has been absolutely fine at least. As for 4G, compared to my Oneplus from 2019, signal has persistently been less reliable. It's more annoying when out driving, as it can mean flaky music and an unreliable Google Assistant. There also seems to be an issue where the device will occasionally decide to adios the internet connection entirely, even when there is signal, needing a reboot to get it back. Everything else about Tensor I'm happy with though, and I do hope the connectivity gets an upgrade in the Pixel 7. Tensor is even responsible for the Pixel 6 being able to do things no other device currently can, like language processing. A big plus for me is the more accurate on-device dictation. Excellent for taking notes when you can't type, and not needing to wait on that poor connection. Sadly, not the case for assistant requests, where most still do need the internet. And even then, it doesn't seem to have an improved understanding anyway.
Since I'm having trouble understanding, you might want to try again when it's safe to use your screen.
So I just don't bother with it much. Maybe I need a more American accent. This concept of great on paper, less useful in practice, unfortunately extends to Google's other wizardry, like some of the dialer stuff. With the recent influx of random calls lately, I was excited to try assistant screening out, but the result each and every time is the caller hanging up immediately, leaving me with no idea if the call was legitimate or not. At least with voicemail, it would give me an idea of the intent, and could block as needed. Some other disappointments I find with Pixel features is driving mode's auto reader being useless for group messages, as it ends up just repeating itself, and at a glance, not being all that useful. But not every feature can spark joy. I do find delight in the Magic Eraser though, with its simplicity. Multitasker, which lets you select text from anywhere, and surprisingly, the Now Playing feature. No longer needing to wonder what song is playing at a restaurant, and being able to nab them for my own playlist. Apparently, with enough cool niche features, Google hopes that at least one or two will excite, and that's at least been true for me. Still on software, I do need to highlight Google's proper approach to RAM management, as many Chinese skins and even Samsung tend to get it so wrong. The Pixel just lets things run as it should, and you won't see tasks killed off. This matters as you don't get things like Chromecast apps disconnecting midway, or background apps like VPNs and Tasker being killed off. Heck, just see how a 7-hour run of the Don't Kill My App benchmark compares to my recent OxygenOS 12 beta run. Finally, for software, I want to say updates have so far been good, and they are compared to many other companies. But I can only assume that Google is having some Tensor issues, as earlier updates were delayed, and after a few months of smooth sailing, the August update has also been delayed. The sky isn't falling yet though, and I expect things to improve as Samsung applies more pressure to this area. Rounding it all out with some quick notes on some hardware stuff. The button placement of volume on the same side as power isn't my preference. Even more annoying is the volume placement in the middle, as phone grips will clamp right to this spot, messing with volume and media capture. And the old divisive camera bar, I personally find to be okay, but some products may not, such as the original Razer Kishi not expecting anything on that side of the device. It does make for a decent finger rest though, but sometimes your fingers will smudge up the camera glass. It's also quite distinctive out in the wild, and at least it can lay on tables without rocking. Lastly, haptics are excellent. Not as noisy as Samsung's, but feel impactful. All the more noticeable with the extra buzzers in Android 12, which I hope 13 builds on. All this said and done, you can definitely see why this one is a bit divisive. It definitely aged more like wine than milk, but it may not be fine just yet. First and foremost, if you need an absolutely reliable signal, then this won't be for you. In most cases, it was acceptable, and even the occasional internet dropout was an inconvenience at most. The rest of the package is rather exceptional for the money spent. One of the best Android skins, some quirky features, an excellent camera and screen, but also a fair share of glitches and drawbacks. If I paid the price of an Ultra phone, I would absolutely not stand for any of these issues. But for the much lower price of entry, some things can be forgiven. With most of these benefits existing on the vanilla Pixel 6 II, that would be the device of choice when looking for value though. Cheers for watching, guys. If you made it this far, why not chuck us a like? It's free and it really helps out tiny channels like mine. Until next time, keep it casual.